Hello, my friend, and welcome to Something for Everybody. My name is Aaron Machbitz, and today is a solo episode of the podcast where I'm discussing burnout. Burnout. We've all heard this term before. It's heavily discussed and heavily talked about, but do we really know what it means and how to solve it or even prevent burnout from ever happening? Right? Burnout has psychological triggers. So if you can identify the triggers, you can actually reverse burnout. And if you truly understand the triggers and how to identify them, you can help burnout proof yourself because burnout emerges when each specific trigger or triggers are activated. So burnout really is a loss of motivation and it's a growing sense of cynicism. Burnout alters our neural circuitry, enlarges our amygdala, and fractures connectivity. Burnout should not be confused with depression. And based on the information I cover in this episode, you will see why. Because again, burnout emerges from when specific triggers are activated, and we have to identify the trigger to reverse or even prevent burnout. So now let's discuss the 6 burnout triggers. Number 1, work overload, the one most people think about when they feel burnt out. When you have a workload that matches your capacity, you can effectively get your work done, have opportunities for rest and recovery, which are extremely important, and find time for professional growth and development. When you chronically feel overloaded, these opportunities to restore don't seem to exist. To address the stress of the work overload, assess how well you're doing in these key areas. Planning your workload, prioritizing your work, delegating tasks, saying no, and letting go of perfectionism. If you haven't been doing one or more of these things, try to make progress, little progress, tiny progress in these time management skill areas, and then see how you feel. For many individuals, especially those who have a bent towards people pleasing, some proactive effort on reducing their workload can significantly reduce or even reverse those feelings of burnout. This one, work overload, is a common one we feel when we feel burnt out. Then what we do is we go on a vacation and then we come back to the exact same work environment. And yeah, we may feel less burnt out for a couple weeks or a couple months or maybe even a year because of that vacation. But eventually the burnout is going to come back because we never addressed the actual environment that we left. We never addressed the work overload. We just went on a vacation. So we didn't identify the trigger and we didn't change ourselves or the situation or our relationship to the situation to be able to reverse the burnout and make sure it doesn't happen again. So it's not just taking a vacation. That's not how you reverse burnout. You have to, again, identify the trigger that emerges and then go from there to solve the problem. Then we move on to burnout trigger number 2, which is lack of control. Feeling like you have lack of autonomy, access to resources, and a say in decisions that impact your professional life can really take a toll on your well-being and obviously cause you to be burnt out. If you find yourself feeling out of control, step back and ask yourself, what exactly is causing me to feel this way? Powerful questions are always a great key to understanding and having awareness for what's going on in your life. For instance, does your boss contact you at all hours of the day and night and make you feel like you need to be on call all the time? Are the priorities within your workplace constantly shifting so you can never get ahead? Or do you simply not have enough predictability in terms of your physical or people resources to effectively perform your job? Again, asking these sorts of questions will really get to the root of it and understand what the trigger is. Again, here is lack of control. Then ask yourself what you can do to shift this situation. Is it possible to discuss the issue with your boss to establish better emotional parameters or boundaries and not respond to messages 24/7? Could you come on an agreement to certain priorities will remain constant, or could you have more resources if communicated about what you needed? Once you've considered these areas, you can see what you can do to influence your environment versus what won't change no matter what you say or do. Again, important questions to ask, identifying certain triggers, the most important trigger here, lack of control, and then seeing how you can change yourself or change the situation or change your relationship with the situation. So that's number 2. Then we move on to number 3, insufficient reward. Again, another one people think about a lot when they feel burnt out. I'm not getting paid enough. The reward is not good enough, whatever the case may be. So number 3 is insufficient reward. If the extrinsic or intrinsic rewards for your job don't match the amount of effort and time you put into them, then you are likely to feel like the investment is not worth the payoff. In these instances, you really want to look within and determine exactly what you would need to feel properly appreciated, like exactly what you need. So potentially you can ask for exactly what you need. But if you don't know what you need or what you want or what a sufficient reward might be, then it's challenging to get there. For example, perhaps you need to ask for a raise or promotion. Again, what is exactly do you need to feel properly appreciated? What is the sufficient reward? Right? Maybe you need some more positive feedback and FaceTime with the boss, or perhaps you need to take advantage of the rewards you've already accrued, such as taking the comp time or the vacation time or whatever that you earned during a particular busy time at the office. Experiment to see which rewards would make what you're doing worth it, or whether there's an opportunity to receive more of these rewards within your current work environment. Again, like I stated, just going on the vacation and then coming back to the same triggers, to the same environment will not reverse the burnout. It will solve it for a little bit, but it won't reverse the burnout or burnout proof you, so you can have this like larger window of tolerance when it comes to dealing with these sorts of things at the workplace or in your life. So that's number 3. Number 4, we have a breakdown of community. Who do you work with or around? How supportive and trusting are those relationships? In many cases, you can't choose your colleagues and clients, but you can improve the dynamic. It could be as simple as taking the time to ask others how their day is going and really listening. Listening is always going to be a key to building strong relationships. Strong relationships, as we know, are the key, the cornerstone of living the good life or having a great workplace environment or building a strong community. Or potentially you could send an email to someone to let them know how appreciated that you appreciated their presentation. That goes a long way. Or choosing to communicate something difficult in a respectful, non-judgmental way. Burnout can be contagious, so to elevate your individual engagement, you must shift the morale of the group. If one person gets burnout, it can pass on and pass on and pass on, and everyone could be experiencing the same burnout trigger. So if you go out of your way to try and build up the community, then you could potentially reverse this breakdown of community and this potential burnout trigger, right? If you found that once you've done all you can, others can improve or don't want to have improved relationships, then at that point, you may want to consider a job change. But it's really important to identify that trigger, see if you can change it in some way. And if you can't, then a breakdown of community where relationships are bad and there's no cohesiveness or reciprocity, then potentially, yes, you may want to consider a job change. And then we have number 5, unfairness. Think about whether you believe that you receive fair and equitable treatment. For example, do you get acknowledged for your contributions, or do other individuals get praised for your work goes unnoticed? Does someone else get regular deadline extensions or access to additional resources when you don't? If you feel that lack of fairness exacerbate your burnout, start by speaking up. You have to say something. You have to advocate for yourself and for your needs. Sometimes individuals are unaware of their biases or won't take action until you ask for what you want. You can request to be mentioned as a contributor or to give part in a presentation or for additional time and resources. If you still find that the responses seem, inequitable, you can consider bringing that up in a polite way. I noticed that the Chicago team, or whatever team, the away team, the Chicago team, the Dallas team, got an additional week to work on their project that was originally due on the same date as ours. Can you help me understand why that's not possible for our team as well? As I go back to this theme, asking the right questions is always going to be a powerful indicator and a powerful mover for understanding your burnout, for listening to people, for building relationships, right? You are your best coach, and the best coaches in the world ask great questions because they're listening. And so you can do the same for yourself when thinking about how you want to reverse burnout, how you want to go about implementing boundaries or standing up for yourself or whatever the case may be based on the trigger that you have identified. And then number 6 is a values mismatch. Values mismatch. If you highly value something that your company does not, your motivation to work hard and persevere, can significantly drop. Ideals and motivation tend to be deeply ingrained in individuals and organizations. So really, what do you stand for? And if there's a mismatch between what you stand for and what your company stands for, it's going to be hard to continue moving forward with them. So when you're assessing this element of burnout, you need to think carefully about how important it is to you that you match your values with those of the organization or group or team or business that you work for. And so also consider whether the leaders in your company have shifted their values. Look around and ask yourself, how does my boss, my team, and my organization make decisions and invest resources? Does it align with me? Do I feel good about those underlying motivations? Do they seem open to change? If I have strongly held values with the influence in your organization differ from others, or you may need to look for a more congruent opportunity. And it's also something to realize that you need to know what your values actually are. You need to have a set of core values and a set of characteristics and a set of first principles that you can filter your thoughts and actions through, so you can know if there's a potential values mismatch, but you just sort of feel off about the direction the company's headed in, or the decisions they're making, or the resources they're allocating, but you don't really know why, because you're not really sure what your first principles are or what your core values are. So you need to understand those. You need to do the work to understand those. Then you're able to identify that trigger as a values mismatch, and then you'll be able to identify that trigger, reverse it, and understand maybe what you can tweak about the values mismatch, asking those great questions, getting to the root of it, knowing what your core values are, knowing what you stand for as a human being, and does that line up with the organization or business that you potentially work for. So those are the 6 burnout triggers. Let's go over them one more time. Number 1, we had work overload. Number 2, we had lack of control. Number 3, we had insufficient reward. Number 4, we have a breakdown of community. Number 5, we have unfairness. And number 6, we had a values mismatch. Those are the 6 burnout triggers. You have to solve the root problem to solve burnout. So just taking a vacation and then coming back to the same environment where the same triggers are present will not solve your issue. You must identify the trigger, work from the root of that cause, and after that, you have 3 potential solutions, which I really mentioned throughout all of the burnout triggers. You can either change your situation, change yourself, or change your relationship with the situation. Again, you can change yourself, change the situation, or change your relationship with the situation. So once you've identified the trigger and you're working from the root cause of that trigger to reverse the burnout, you can change yourself, change the situation, or change your relationship with the situation. Again, refer to what I said earlier for specific examples on each trigger and what you can potentially do to change yourself, to change the situation, or to change your relationship with the situation. It's always going to be about asking the right questions to get to the root of the cause, because you've identified that trigger that's emerged. Then you can understand how you can change yourself, the situation, or your relationship to the situation. Then, on top of that, we have burnout proofing, which expands your window of tolerance. Burnout proofing is eating, moving, sleeping, and eating well to expand your capacity and window of tolerance, right? You have to be able to burnout proof, which is eating well, moving well, sleeping well, and thinking well. Eating, moving, sleeping, and thinking well, right? So you have to understand that sleep has to be a top priority. Eating well has to be a top priority. Moving well has to be a top priority. And thinking well has to be a top priority. This is about your rest and recovery and coming to work, coming to your job, doing whatever you're doing every day, energized to the best of your ability. This will burnout proof you. This will expand your window of tolerance. It will allow you to expand your capacity of what you can do if you are prioritizing those basic fundamentals of being a human being. What are the fundamentals of being a human being? Eating, moving, sleeping, thinking. So if you do all of those things well, or if you prioritize one thing for each of those buckets each and every day, I'm going to eat well, I'm going to move well, I'm going to sleep well, and I'm going to think well to expand expand my capacity, expand my window of tolerance, burnout proof myself. So when one of these triggers pops up, I can identify it quickly. I can get to the root cause of it, and I can change myself, the situation, or my relationship with the situation while constantly every day, every single day, no matter what, burnout proofing myself by being brilliant at the basics and eating well, moving well, sleeping well, and thinking well. So there you have it. You have the 6 burnout triggers, how to reverse those triggers, and also how to burnout proof yourself. I hope you found this useful and valuable. If you did, please share this episode with anyone who might need it or find it valuable. The podcast grows really from you. You are my best marketing tool, so please share it with every single person who might find this episode on burnout valuable. And I appreciate you very much. And thank you for your time and attention. Thank you very much for tuning into that episode. And if you enjoyed it, click right here for another full-length episode of the podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe. But most importantly, above all else, please take good care of yourselves and others. And I'll see you next time. Lots of love. Cheers.